I suppose it could be.
And I'm not having much luck. And I dropped something, and I said, so we had so
Okay, good evening, everybody.
finished to be continued, Betty.
We're going to get started here. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me. Pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We'll convene as the Courthouse Improvement Committee tonight.
I just thought of that.
I guess some housekeeping notes first. Jake, or who do we got back there tonight? April is there tonight, waving at me. Do we have all of the other, or everybody who is going to Zoom in is zoomed in?
She's got Robin in,
She does, okay. Okay,
and she's live.
okay, great, thank you. So I want to thank everyone for being here. I want to thank the staff for being here, and I see we got Lowell out there pulling security at the door, so I want to thank him for being here too. Tonight is the night where this is our third meeting now, Courthouse Improvement Committee. First meeting was to talk about touring this courthouse, both the old side and the new side. And the second meeting that we had was the court system, Unified Judicial System came here and made a presentation for us. That presentation is online, so if people want to view it, view the PowerPoint, they can to see what the needs are of the court system. Now we've got our third meeting here tonight, which is where our Sheriff's Department and State's Attorney, so the law enforcement portion of the discussion is going to begin here, where they're going to talk about their needs. What I do want to say is we've adopted a new practice where if you're speaking, go ahead and feel free to take your mask off. We're appropriately socially distanced from each other, so I think we're safe on that front. And then before we get started, Mr. Co-Chairman, do you have anything you want to say?
Let's just get it on.
All right, let's get it on. Anybody else for the good of the order? Okay, I think are we starting out with the Sheriff's Department, or are we flipping a coin?
All right, I'll try to make this short and sweet, put a little PowerPoint together to kind of give you an idea what Lincoln County Sheriff's Office looks like today, and some guesstimates on what we're going to look like in 10 and 15 years. Okay, the first slide is it represents what Lincoln County Sheriff's Office looks like today. The blue markings would be the command staff of the Sheriff's Office. The red is the different divisions. We have the jail, court security, civil investigations, and patrol. Yellow indicates full-time staff. The white markings are part-time staff in each division. We currently 3 patrol deputies short that we're in the interview process today for. Started today, runs through the rest of the week. This is just a breakdown of the staffing. We currently have 3 patrol officers in the FTO program and 2 that are out on military leave. So we're down 5 currently, actually be 8 with 3 in FTO, or 3 in that are not hired yet. These are the population studies that were done during the jail study. The current population is estimated at 62,170, and in 15 years, estimated at 87,910. I'm not sure how accurate these are now that we have Highway 100 that is going to start being built here in 2 years, as well as we have a development coming to Canton one to Lake Alvin, and Harrisburg has reported that they'll have a record number of single-family home permits this year in the range of 100, and then 16 multifamily. This is what Lincoln County's done over the last 9 years. The growth in Lincoln County is 36%, Harrisburg 63%, and T 58%. These numbers were I got these off the U.S. Census. Canton and Lenox, those are Google numbers. They're not in the U.S. Census as cities. So the population that Lincoln County Sheriff's Office patrols is approximately 20,197. That's taken out the city of Sioux Falls population, T, Canton, Lenox, and part of Beersford because they have their own police departments. So that gives us about a 20,000 people that we patrol or serve in the county. Using the national staffing levels, they use 1.5 officers per 1,000 people is what the FBI recommends. We're currently at 1.1 police officers per 1,000, which I think we're getting close. Maybe 1.2 would be a better number, but 1.5, Chief Deputy Brown and I have discussed it. For the Midwest, we feel like that's an overkill. So to meet the standards that we're currently running, we need 9 additional officers in 2030 and 14 additional officers in 2035. And then just using the current staffing, we have 1 detective per 6 deputies. That probably won't hold up, and you'll see that the crime rate is obviously going up, or the numbers are going up. These are our calls for service over the last 3 years. You'll see the big jump in 2018 to 2019. A little bit of that is we're tracking some stuff differently since I took office. The other is we've added some staff. So obviously, the more police officers we have out there, the more calls for service we can respond to. Here are some of the calls for service that are concerning. Burglaries, as you can see, from 2017 to 2020 have over doubled in the county. Assaults, disorderly conducts, and domestic violence are all in the second category, and they've nearly doubled as well. Some more calls for service. Paper service is serving the civil papers throughout the county, and that includes all cities in the county. Those have really jumped from 2019 to 2020. I'm guessing because of the pandemic. Traffic enforcement steadily growing. Again, additional staff is going to affect that. This is something new the Sheriff's Office took on in 2019 to streamline the mental health process for the county, with behavioral health being in Lincoln County. So we serve all mental health paperwork for all counties in the state. So we don't have a real good feel of that, but that's what we've seen since we've taken it over. Transports, you'll see the number of transports dropped significantly in 2020, again because of the pandemic. My understanding is that attorneys are asking for more in-person court, so we anticipate that will go back up to the levels it was in 2018, 2019 as the pandemic goes away. What that doesn't show is several of those transports, there's 5 and 7 people in the van at a time. So just to give you an example of that's just the number of individual transports we've done. Currently, we have electronic monitoring in the 24/7 program. Both programs are running probably at maximum capacity for the staff we have. The electronic monitoring CO is currently monitoring 30 people, and she doesn't feel like she can probably take on many more without additional staff. And that the 24/7 electronic monitoring people work together, so it would probably be an additional one person in the next 10 years. These are the spaces that we currently occupy in the sheriff's, or in the courthouse. Everybody's toured it, so I won't bore you with that, but the sheriff's office itself is at capacity. We don't have any open spaces. We do have the new investigation suite that we took over last year. That has space for 3 more investigators. It's a cubicle setup, and everybody saw that as well. The Harrisburg substation, which a lot of people don't know we have, is owned actually by the city of Harrisburg. It's their old city hall. It's about 660 square feet of office space. We have 2 desks in there. And I would estimate 90% of the deputies report to that location to do their paperwork versus the Canton office. So they have plenty of space there. There's a heated garage. They actually have 2 heated garage spaces there. They total about another 2,000 square feet. So it's very valuable space to us. Some of the future space needs that we've identified is our evidence room is pretty full. We could do some efficiencies in there with some different storage techniques to get us another 5 or 10 years, I assume. That again all depends on what different crimes happen here. Our admin space, at the front desk, we currently have our jail administrator and the administrative assistant that greets the public, and then a jail deputy that are all 3 stationed there. Don't know that could probably take another person, but eventually, as we add staff, we'll need more support staff. A deputy bay is currently 2 deputies can work out of there. That would probably need to grow to 4 in the near future. Public restroom. Currently, the 24/7 holding cells we use for the UAs, et cetera. But anybody that comes in for any other business, we actually have to send outside and back into the other side of the courtroom. So that would be is a necessity if we end up in a different space. Training room. Currently, we don't have a training room. Something we would need in the future. Holding cells and a place for attorneys and the inmates to be able to communicate, a sally port, and secure parking for the judges, and then a security control room, and that's for deputies to monitor the courtrooms. Currently, we provide a deputy for every courtroom that is in session, and an efficiency to that would be to maybe monitor 2 or 3 of them by video in close proximity. So as we were talking to the architects, this is kind of what we envision. This is actually a jail cell or a cell block. If we could, and I'm not the greatest with PowerPoint, so to get rid of maybe the top level and the stairs, this is just kind of a visual. You'd have a place for the inmates to sit and wait for court. If we had any problem inmates, maybe have a couple cells in the back of that room to separate them. And then the door off to the right there would be a door that the inmate would go. His attorney would be on the other side of that wall with a barrier, so you don't have to worry about attorneys being assaulted or contraband issues. Then we would mirror that on the other side, that same cell, again, to scale, and then put something where one officer could monitor both sides, male and female, and then the other one would be monitored. There would be a second one in there to monitor courtrooms and provide security for courts. And then a sally port, again, drop it down to scale for our inmates to be transferred securely from the transport vehicle to the holding cells. That's what I got.
Questions, comments? And just so people know, those pictures that are up there, that's from the Minnehaha County Jail, right?
No, those are from the jail study we did previously.
No, those pictures?
Nope.
That's not Minnehaha County? Oh, okay. Well, it looks amazingly similar.
Yep.
So, okay. All right, anybody? Pretty quiet group tonight?
That's
This is
what
your
I like.
opportunity to grill the sheriff. Yeah?
Thank you.
Okay. Quick exit off the stage there.
I hope not everybody's saving it up for me. Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Thank you.
Folks, my name is Tom Woolman. I'm the Lincoln County State's Attorney, and thank you for this opportunity to meet with you all to discuss our potential future needs of growth in our office as Lincoln County continues to grow some more. When I started this job in July of 2000, I think we were in the mid-20s, about 25,000 people. And as we sit here today, awaiting our new census, whoops, I need to move a little closer, April. Awaiting our new census numbers, we are going to be well in excess of that. I'll go ahead and get my PowerPoint started here. The traditional role of the prosecutor is to review charges that have been brought to the office by law enforcement and to evaluate those charges to determine whether or not a prosecution needs to proceed. The slideshow from beginning. There we go. To evaluate whether or not the facts support criminal charges moving forward. That's the traditional role of the prosecutor's office in a nutshell. As time has gone on and as the offices have evolved, and in particular, county prosecutors are now charged with being human resource departments, personnel management, union negotiators, and a whole host of other areas that we were never involved in the past. So our offices maintain that traditional responsibility, the exclusive and statutory responsibility for prosecuting violations of criminal laws, as well as other regulatory laws of the state, such as taxation violations and the such, and traffic as well. We also, of course, prosecute juvenile crimes as well, which takes up a portion of our time, and we initiate and prosecute abuse and neglect proceedings in defense of those children who are living in neglectful homes. So when Department of Social Services or Child Protection has removed a child from a home, we come in, analyze the facts and circumstances that brought that child into custody, and make a determination as to whether or not we need to initiate what are called abuse and neglect proceedings. Additionally, we provide legal advice to the Board of County Commissioners, the other elected and appointed department heads and staff members, and we work on administrative and civil matters for the county as well, to include, again, taxation issues and planning and zoning issues, et cetera. So in 2000, again, when I started the state's attorney's office, we had the state's attorney, a deputy state's attorney, and 3 staff positions. Again, that population was in the mid-20s, about 24 or 5. And at that point in time, Lincoln County had just joined the Second Judicial Circuit. You heard Judge Howman the other week talk about that the Second Judicial Circuit is comprised of Minnehaha and Lincoln County. And I don't know if they were exactly ready for the growth that we had in store for them. And as you heard Judge Howman talk about those numbers, I don't know that anyone really could have foreseen that we were going to grow this much and as fast as we have. We've maintained probably in the top 20, our position within the top 20 over the last 20 years in terms of counties with the highest growth rates across the country. And, plan as you may, that growth sneaks up on you. Initially, when I started, the felony matters that were in front of the office were mostly felony DWI offenses. We really had a lot of those, some burglary offenses, some drug possession cases, methamphetamine, marijuana, simple assault domestics, and what I would describe as an occasional homicide and or manslaughter. Homicide, of course, being a murder charge. first, second degree, et cetera. And then those manslaughter charges oftentimes involved vehicular homicides, or I see Chad nodding his head. I can think of one over on Highway 11 where I know that you were very much involved in that prosecution. It was a head-on collision, and 2 individuals were prosecuted from that. That took a lot of time from a 1 or 2 person office to advance those prosecutions. Dating back, historically, we've had a couple bigger homicide prosecutions over the years. Obviously the Moeller case, Donald Moeller was prosecuted on 2 separate occasions for first-degree murder and for the rape, kidnapping, and murder of Becky O'Connell. That was a death penalty case on each occasion, and prosecuted twice upon a reversal from the South Dakota Supreme Court on an issue. I can think of the smattering of other homicides that we had probably through 2010, and it was probably less than 1 a year, I would say. And that's certainly a good thing to have in the face of that growth that we had from starting back 95 through probably 2010. And we've always had a good, what I would describe as good growth. And I think that our growth from 2010 to 2020, maybe there's a little bit of a day of reckoning that's come with that population base. And some of those crimes that have traditionally been north of 57th Street have been filtering down into our communities. And we've seen a significant uptick in the cases that we're filing as a result of the population growth. But from 2000 to 2010, I think we were pretty fortunate with our overall crime rate. So in 2008, through our current caseload, cheap, highly potent methamphetamine has driven the majority of what we're working on. And I would say that's the number 1 charge that we have in terms of felony prosecutions from, again, 2008, 2010 through current. And then the methamphetamine-related offenses. Those obviously result in homicides, burglaries, theft offenses, assaults, DWI offenses. So on top of the regular homicide cases that don't involve that aspect. But burglary, theft offenses are very much on the rise, as you heard the sheriff discuss. It's a rare day when I don't log into the communications call for service screen and I don't see a deputy dispatched to one of our storage units, either in Southern Sioux Falls, Harrisburg, or Canton, taking a report of a storage unit burglary. And I bet I'd bet the farm that each one of those storage unit burglaries is driven by a methamphetamine addiction. So again, a significant uptick in those drug-related offenses. Drug-related because it's committed by a user to procure funding for more drugs generally. Our DWI offenses are still there, but they aren't there like they were traditionally when I started, and now they have the component of drug use and alcohol use, or the combined effect of those 2 drugs, whether it be marijuana, methamphetamine, and alcohol, or pick your choice. One other drug possession charge that we are seeing more of is our heroin and fentanyl prosecutions. And of course, you don't have to flip very far back in the news cycle to see some deaths in our community that are directly attributable to those drugs, in particular fentanyl, and some rather high-profile charges. And the U.S. Attorney's Office has been stepping up and prosecuting a number of those death-related cases where they go after the dealers of those crimes for some somewhat unique charges that they have available to them to pursue those individuals that sell those drugs that result in a death. And then I've listed employee theft as well. Our embezzlement cases have been steadily rising as the years have gone by as well. So in our current caseload, we've got some new ways to commit some of those old crimes. And in particular, technology has really driven a lot of these offenses. Child pornography, when I started, and I think I had one of the first real big child porn cases probably back in 2002. And we've always been fortunate to have some amazing investigators that have been at the top of the game in terms of forensic evidence. But I had the misfortune of having a case of child pornography, and I remember what an uproar that was. Traditionally, child pornography had been either film, printed pictures and/or magazines, et cetera, that are distributed. But with the internet and digital means of transporting those images, it took off. And so we've had a number of those prosecutions over the years. Solicitation of a minor, sexting. Clearly, it wasn't a thing pre-cell phone. Identity theft, fraud, and hacking of computers. In particular, identity theft is a crime that we probably we initiate a prosecution on almost weekly in my office, where someone has broken into an unlocked car or managed to get their hands on someone's credit card and used that credit card for their own gain, or used routing numbers from a bank account, a checking account to, they don't wash the checks the way that they used to. They just print new checks with those routing numbers, and they are very convincing. They look like the actual checks. So again, with technology, we need to step up our game to investigate and prosecute those cases. And of course, cyber crimes, stalking, and electronic harassment, electronic tracking and harassment. These are crimes that we really didn't have when I started. And as a result of that, we've needed to not only up our game, but also up our staff. Because with that comes the management of digital evidence. So when Sheriff Swenson and his team go out and conduct investigations, more often than not, an offender's cell phone holds a lot of information about the crime, whether they're distributing drugs. It holds information about where that offender was at dates and times leading up to the offense and the apprehension. And as a result of that, his investigators need to step up their game, and my prosecutors need to step up their game in terms of how do we secure, and copy and disseminate that evidence to defense counsel. And it isn't like the old days when Trooper Swenson would turn on his video camera in his car, which was a VHS tape in his trunk, and record his DWI stop. And then my paralegals and secretaries would take 2 VHS tapes and simply push a button and dub those tapes. Now we deal with multiple file formats from the video camera at Pump and Pack or Casey's or the Harrisburg High School where we had a shooting, and each one of those security cameras is a different digital recording system and a different format that we have to be able to. They're all proprietary, and you just about have to be as smart as Jake or April, our IT department, to be able to figure out how to not to copy, but then to send it off to defense counsel. So it's an information explosion. Our cell phones are computers. There's no question that they hold more data and more resident memory and storage than our original computers did from the computers even from the early 2000s. So again, we're charged with the responsibility of preserving all that evidence ethically and professionally, and then disseminating that to defense counsel for discovery, and doing so in a secure way so as to not have any breaches of that, but also to ensure that they get a true and accurate copy of what we have. The video evidence, as I mentioned before, it's not VHS tapes anymore. It's body cameras, videos from patrol cars, security camera footages, homes. Everybody's got a Ring camera or a Nest camera, and those are incredibly valuable as a resource for law enforcement in terms of apprehending offenders or collecting evidence to prosecute offenders. But again, it's an extra step. It's not just the canvassing of the neighborhood. Did you hear something go bump at the night at 2 a.m? I notice you have a Ring doorbell camera. May we take a look at that, and may we take a video of that? So completely different game than we were involved with in 2000. I keep saying 2000, but really I know that this space study is a little bit more 2010 present, but it's just amazing from where we've come. Trial software. My office was fortunate enough to have the blessing of the commissioners to purchase some trial software back in 2016, I believe it was, when we first adopted or got that trial management software or case management software, and it is invaluable. And it has significantly aided my office in the management of the files that we have, our schedules, et cetera. We can remote into it thanks to our IT department, and we were light years ahead of a lot of our colleagues when the pandemic hit, because my prosecutors could go home, remote in, conduct business, file things, respond to emails, look at the same case that I'm looking at in my desk at Canton when my prosecutor's at home in Sioux Falls. And so it does a great job of assisting us and makes us much, much more efficient. So, but with that, again, there's additional training and just maintenance that we need to stay up on with learning new things about that, not only that software, but just technology daily. So in 2010, we had 4 deputies and 5 staff positions. And, you know, on this particular slide, all the lines come to my position. Really, they go to the deputy state's attorneys as well, and back and forth and in circles sometimes. But that was the makeup of the office in 2010. In 2016, one additional tweak that we had to the office was to add a full-time victim witness assistant to keep up with the Constitutional Amendment S that was implemented by the voters. I really feel like prior to 2016 that we were staying on top of our victim management in terms of reaching out to our victims, making sure that their voice was heard, that they had an understanding of what we were doing with the proceedings and what the next moves were, and of course, of paramount importance, what their input was for the ultimate result of what we were aiming for in our prosecution of the offender. But with this particular constitutional amendment, we did add an additional staff and member, and we were one of 3 counties in the state that did so. And I think that that's been an important addition to my office. Becoming more efficient, again, that case management software, the sharing of information within the office. Again, I put a note into a file, everybody can see it pretty much real time. So if I'm in the courtroom, somebody can log in and see what's going on with any particular sentencing, bond modification, et cetera. And the attorneys can act accordingly, and our victim witness assistants can act accordingly in updating our victims about any changes to bonds, et cetera. And again, it makes us a much more efficient office. In 2020, we consist of 6 deputy state's attorneys and 7 staff positions, and our overall population in 2019 was 61,000. Of course, we anticipate that those numbers are going to be coming in higher than that here with the census results. I think that's in May, isn't it?
September.
September, okay. Maybe I'm overly optimistic, I guess, because I think that's going to be an important number for us in what we're doing on the whole as a county. So, but again, a significant increase in population, and you know, as I look at my office staff and personnel, the trick with the growth that we've had is anticipating where we're going to be at the end of the next calendar year, or the following calendar year, and it's been an interesting game of choreography and management. And a little bit of guesswork. You know, you look back at what the trends were for the last couple years, 5 years, and then you make your best educated guess and move forward in staff recommendations to the county board. And I feel like we've done a pretty good job of staying on top of that growth. But in all honesty, as I sit here and look at this slide, it shouldn't be 6 deputies and 7 staff positions. It should be 6.5 deputies and 8 or 9 staff positions. We really have just been slammed in the last couple of years, and in particular, I'll get to it, but it's in the mental health responsibilities that we have in the prosecution of those particular matters. So, felony caseload in 2020, total cases that came across our desks for felony matters were over 600. From those 600, we initiated 500 felony prosecutions. And we had 2.5 full-time felony attorneys working on those and reviewing about 209 cases apiece and just under 200 files for felony files per attorney. The various, in reviewing the literature that's out there, whether it's the ABA standards or the the American Bar Association standards or the National District Attorneys Association standards. They put it, and the Department of Justice, can't leave them out, 150 to 180 files is a responsible number, depending on the difficulty of the case and the seriousness of the matter. Prior to 2017, I was handling all the felony prosecutions. In 2017, I brought a senior trial level attorney in that came down from Minnehaha County, and she came on board and has provided a great level of assistance in running with those cases, because I'm left to administrate to manage the office and to try and keep up with that caseload. We absolutely needed some help, and as we move forward, these numbers will continue to grow, and we will be asking for more attorneys as we move forward. So these numbers that are on the board here don't reflect the probation violation numbers, which are, again, it just seems like there's a continual uptick of those numbers. And those are individuals that have been placed out on a suspended penitentiary sentence and placed on probation and have violated the terms of the probation. So it's not uncommon we expect that people are going to have trip-ups while on supervised probation, and they come back in front of the court to be resentenced, and oftentimes they're given another opportunity and maybe some additional goals that they need to achieve while on supervised probation. But it's not uncommon to file 1 to 2 probation violations in any given case. Oftentimes those are our addicted offenders who need a little bit of extra time to help hopefully get things figured out and to tackle those addictions while on supervised probation. So there's a lot of moving parts in the management of our felony caseload. These are just the raw numbers on the actual charges that were filed. The misdemeanor caseload for 2020, total cases reviewed 1389, total cases filed 1150, and we've had three full-time misdemeanor attorneys that have been working on those files. They each have other responsibilities within the office as well, whether that be handling grand jury proceedings, juvenile proceedings, subbing into felony court and things like that. So, but it's about 383 filed cases per attorney. And the recommended amounts, again, 300 to 400 by the U.S. Department of Justice. NDAA as well has similar recommendations. And in that, again, these case numbers don't reflect the probation violations that we have of those misdemeanor sentences as well. Oh, no. Oh, there we go. Abuse and neglect proceedings, I think I mentioned those on the original slide. Again, those are those cases where we have removed a child from an injurious environment, bad house, dirty house, addicted parents, neglectful parents, etc. And we've calculated the responsibility for that position at about a half-time attorney and staff member. And they're certainly hour intensive for both the attorneys and staff that work on those files. And then mental health proceedings, as I mentioned, this is something that and I think Judge Howman's presentation actually had us tracking for upwards of 700 petitions for 2021, just based on the data that they'd crunched. But this is something that our office really didn't handle before 2000 and, Bill?
I think that was
2018? 2000, I believe it was 2018. Again, with the downsizing of the bed numbers at HSC, those patients were going to a Vera Behavioral, and so because it's in our county, we're responsible for those hearings. So again, not something that we could really anticipate. We knew it was coming. We didn't know how big it was going to be, and it's just continued to grow. And it's an unfortunate thing, but it's a real responsibility for my office to make sure that those cases get the time and review that is necessary for each of them. Our civil caseload in 2020, we've got 1 full-time employee, 44 open files involving litigation. Again, we provide legal advice to the elected officials, department heads, and employees. handle civil litigation, administrative hearings, and assist with the criminal litigation as well. And I would characterize that as our habeas cases, which are a collateral attack on a final judgment that offenders that have already gone through a direct appeal to the Supreme Court can file if they're still detained. And it's a collateral attack on the effectiveness of their attorney, et cetera, et cetera. We handle those cases at the trial level. And Mr. Golden, as our chief civil deputy, has handled a number of those along with the assistance of other deputies in the office. Talked a little bit about the advice to the various department heads and employees. And I think I mentioned initially about we also wear an HR hat. And we've got a full-time HR director now, which has significantly helped my office because we needed that position. We absolutely needed that HR director, and I believe that she's now had a half-time employee added to her roster as well, simply because the issues just continue to grow as we grow. And again, that's just the reality. Anytime you grow an organization the way that we've grown, there are going to be issues that we need to stay ahead of with federal employment issues, state employment issues, union issues that we negotiate with our sheriff's department deputy unions, our deputies union, and that wasn't present back in the day when we first started, or when I first started, excuse me. So where does this lead us? Again, it's a big crescendo. It just has continued to grow. We've added staff, I believe, conservatively to deal with the growth that we've had and the growth in our numbers. But realistically, looking at past growth and looking at where we're moving in the future with the various building permits that are being issued, Harrisburg T, Southern Sioux Falls, our 5-year outlook would be 9 to 10 attorneys, and our 10-year outlook would probably be 11 to 12 attorneys. I mentioned originally that the growth that I tracked in 2000 to 2010, and sometimes I sound like a broken record on this, my service club speech was always about it's been good growth. I mean, we had very positive growth in terms of the numbers that we had in population versus our crime rate. I wouldn't say that it was static, but it certainly didn't grow like one may expect it to grow. And now, again, as we move forward, we've got the plague of cheap, potent methamphetamine that has visited all of our communities, and that's driven our crime through the roof. And it's led to broken families and broken homes, and just it's an absolute ruinous drug, and it has created a lot of workforce, and it's not going to go away. So again, our 10-year plan, our anticipated growth would be 11 to 12 attorneys. Currently at 9 staff members. I think we're soft in that number right now, but our anticipated growth for the 5-year plan would be 12 to 13, and 10 years would be 15 to 16, and then our total number would be from 16 to 23 to 20, or 21 to 23 in the 5-year plan, and 26 to 28 in the 10-year plan. And it's my understanding that Andrew and his numbers is ballparked, I believe, 8,500 square feet roughly for anticipated office space for those staff members and for just the day-to-day operations of the office. So with that, any questions as I wrap up here?
Tom, I'll kick it off. And I'll probably ask the sheriff some of these questions, and this is more for the purpose of educating the public per se, because they don't see the day-to-day interaction here in the courthouse. That's a good thing when the
Right.
public doesn't have to come to the courthouse, especially for law enforcement issues. But you talk about needing more staff. Tell us how that drives other than the obvious, how does that drive the space needs in your office? And here's what I'm getting at. I don't want to play hide the ball. We can't just put prosecutors in an office just anywhere in the courthouse. They're dealing with sensitive files, sensitive materials, those sorts of things, dealing with cases. Currently, in order to get into your office, you got to go through the front desk and through there. Can you kind of talk to some of those issues about, how much space you need per se, and what kind of space that is.
Right. Starting with our prosecutors, as you mentioned, handle sensitive data, and they handle data that sometimes needs to be compartmentalized. They meet with the victims in preparation for grand jury proceedings and trial proceedings. And if I didn't have to deal with another crying young victim in my office, I would be a very happy man. But the reality of it is that we deal with child rape, we deal with adult rape, we deal with victims of crimes that would have a profound impact on them. And to protect the dignity of those victims, it's probably best we're not meeting with them in a secretarial pool. We need a door. We need a door to just for purposes of keeping outside noise out, et cetera, but also for those other listed reasons. And our victim witness assistants, I would say probably on the same level. They meet with victims and deal with things that we don't get to meet people at their best. We meet them sometimes when they're absolutely broken. And those are meetings that need to be held in confidence, and a victim needs to feel comfortable in discussing those matters where there isn't secretaries flying around and the copy machine running and people yapping on the phone. So we've kept our victim witness assistants and paralegals as best we can behind either glass sliding doors or actual physical, regular traditional doors, just for purposes of that the privacy factor. And then as we move forward, we can't put people in the hallway, and I've got one space maybe that I can give up in the immediate near future, which would be a room where we've traditionally held our grand jury proceedings and office staff meetings, et cetera. And it may be on the chopping block in the interest of just continuity of business to divide that up in some way, shape, or form so that we have more office space. Again, we moved in 2008, and then we had some open offices in the suite, and thought, wow, yeah, this will accommodate us for a bit of time. And then again, that growth really took off in 2008 and 2012. We saw some huge upticks, and pretty soon we were out of office space, and we divided some spaces up just to accommodate.
And in terms of your office space, and again, a lot of the general public hasn't seen it for obvious reasons. Members of this committee did get a tour. Is it spatially possible to remodel it to provide for what you anticipate the growth to be? Or is it just impossible because of the needs and demands of what you just explained?
I would have to, one word, impossible. If we're going to grow as an office and add these potential staff and attorney numbers, we would need to go through into other space. I believe the courtroom across the hallway, Commissioner Schmidt, that was the open space, I think initially had been slated for growth for the state's attorney's office. So, yeah, and that may have been adequate long run, but we didn't know that we were didn't realize that we were gonna need that much more courtroom space at the time.
Has that stimulated any discussion on the part of anybody? Any questions for our state's attorney or comments? Concerns?
It certainly puts a new angle on my perception of perhaps the direction that Lincoln County is going to have to go from my initial perception of what this committee was going to be responsible for doing and accomplishing. In other words, the first 3 meetings, my eyes have gone from like this big to this big.
Tom, how difficult is it when you go and try to find a state's attorney with the load that they have? How difficult is that to find somebody who is competent in those particular fields that you want them?
For that entry-level position, or, the commission has built in for a 0 to 5 years of experience. And, you know, sometimes we've been surprised at some of the people that we've been able to recruit. I think that we've got a good working environment in the office, and I think that our caseload has been such that we're busy, but not, you know, just barely treading water busy. So I think that that's been attractive to some of the candidates that we've had for various positions. But yeah, it's really varied in terms of the applicants that we've had. And again, some of those, I mean, I would say that we've always ultimately been lucky in who we've been able to recruit and hire. But in some of those hiring pools, it's been as few as 5 people that we've interviewed, and sometimes even less than that. But it's I think it's still a good place to land. But as I mentioned in anticipating that growth, that's just been of utmost importance to me, is that we don't get too far behind and have people working, being in those positions when they can't get the job done in the allotted 8 hours, right? Because I can't have non-exempt employees in the office on the weekends. It doesn't work. And then we start chasing overtime, and then we start facing burnout. And so that's certainly problematic.
Well, I know sometimes, Tom, you provide a great training ground for young attorneys to come in. And sometimes after they've been there for a period of years and they have all that experience and stuff, greener pastures look for you, and then you have to start all over again. I know that for a fact, but you know, sometimes I think you've been, your department probably deserves a few kudos, because I don't think we've experienced the same turnover that they have in other larger counties, maybe in Minnehaha, and I don't know about Pennington, but the turnover seems to be very small here comparison. Do you have any comment on that?
Well, I'm biting my tongue because I don't want to talk about the Minnehaha County State's Attorney where he started, but there, I think I worked that in. But yeah, and that's a great feather as well, that we did provide that training to somebody who was highly competent and went on to bigger things. The flip side was our former chief civil deputy, who was with us, provided 18 years of experience. Or gave us 18 years, had 18 years and gave 18 years to the county, and that's a big deal. So it's, I really work to recruit individuals that work well together and have a common interest. And I think it's been important to stay on top of that caseload, and that we don't get people that are working too hard that burn out and lose interest and become disenchanted with the whole process. It is a very stressful caseload. As I mentioned earlier, we don't deal with people in their finest shining hour, and that's true whether it's a victim or an offender, and we need to be respectful of both. That's
One more
a big
question,
deal.
Tom. How many current murder cases do you have on your docket?
Currently, I believe that we're down to 2. We were up to 5 last year, and I think that we just have 3 pending. We've got 1 vehicular homicide and then 2 first-degree murder cases.
You know,
So,
Tom, you
changed.
mentioned earlier Avera Behavioral. County had no control essentially over, Avera wanted to place a behavioral health center in Lincoln County. We welcome them, of course. But now what that's turned into, because of the way that the state statutes work, is now your office is responsible for having to handle a lot of those cases, just given not only state statute, but state dynamics. Because I think a lot of people don't understand, is the Avera Behavioral Health Center here, in conjunction with HSC closing or
The
taking
drawdown.
limited,
Right.
exactly, the drawdown, has resulted in a lot of counties having to send those people here to Lincoln County just because of where it's located. You know, just, can you give us a snapshot or an idea of just what your office, the day-to-day grind that's involved with having to deal with the mental health cases?
It's, as we listed in the PowerPoint, it's a half-time position. And what does that mean? It translates into probably 3 to 5 days, well, at least 3 days a week dealing with those files. And that could be daily, it could be 3 of them on one day, or several of them all coming together on a Friday. And there are only certain hearing dates that everyone's available for, but yeah, it caught us off guard. There's no question. I think we knew it was coming, but we probably didn't adequately staff it initially. Now I feel like we have a better grip on it. And then, we pursue those counties, those referring counties for the cost, and the auditor's office and my office is involved in that. But again, we get some reimbursement, but that doesn't take care of the employees that and all the expenses that we realistically put forth in taking care of those matters.
Anybody else for the sheriff or the state's attorney? Sheriff, I'll ask you the same thing. You had a slide called future space needs. I'm gonna assume, there's some items on there that obviously cannot be placed in your, in the basement of the courthouse here where your office is currently located, sally ports, things like that. But, can you tell us or inform the public or the rest of the committee, spatially, can you meet your needs down there if you just quote-unquote remodeled? Or is this something beyond the existing footprint that you currently occupy?
It would definitely be beyond the footprint that we occupied. And we had this conversation with the architect. The public restrooms out front, we saw no option for that. Dispatch is at maximum capacity. And we're actually in 2 different suites now as it is, and that makes it difficult, even though it's 2 doors. That communication with investigations is huge to keep things going. So without taking maybe the entire basement and remodeling it, which there's obviously other offices that are occupied by Highway and Game Fish and Parks and IT, with the space we're currently given, I'm not an architect, but my understanding from the architect is it wouldn't be possible.
Okay. And same thing goes with your office. You've got to maintain a certain level of security as a law enforcement office as well, right?
Right.
And that certainly puts some constraints on your ability to move and grow and things like that inside your existing footprint.
Correct.
Okay. Got it. Anybody else?
I'll go.
Yep.
You have something, Eddie?
I do, I'll
Go
go
ahead.
after you.
Okay. I'll ask for indulgence as I carefully try to word this question the best to fully encompass. Will basically be directed at department heads, sheriff and state's attorney, and probably even Jim because of his long history on the commission. And that is, we're in our 13th year in the admin side of this courthouse. Being a Canton, born and raised and lived here my whole life, I still consider this new. Never, I'm sure none of us in this room thought 13 years ago when we finished this, that we would be going through this in 13 years with the problems that we have currently and are now addressing. I know that every presentation, even with the judicial side at last month's meeting, are giving us your best projections for what's going to be future growth needs for all of the different departments, from spatial needs to courtroom space, etc. How confident are we that those numbers are not too conservative, and that we as a committee, address this, fix this, get us up. But then in another 13 years, hopefully not all of us, but there's not another group sitting here doing the exact same thing again. And like I said, they'll just kind of open that up to everybody, especially people who have that history of going through this 13 years ago.
If I may, Chad, when we did this courthouse, we were trying to project at least 10 or 15 years out. And at that time, I think we were fairly confident that we were okay. But what we didn't count on was the growth that is been the phenomenal growth that's come out of Sioux Falls. And that growth not only sparked Sioux Falls, or sparked this northern part of our county, it also impacted the cities of T and Harrisburg. Because when you look at their record, Harrisburg was a town of 500 and some people, and now it's a town of 7,000, 8,000 people, and T the same way. So, you know, I can remember walking through this courthouse, and we had we had a square foot right where the new courtroom is. And we thought, my gosh, look at this future growth. What are we going to do with all this space? Well, the impact of growth is, and your point is very well made, because I don't know that we really know, because there are projections out there that we'll be 100,000 people in about 20 years from now, 25 years from now. So how are we going to handle that? I think we're going to come in at about 65,000 people. That's my guess for our census. If you take another 10 years from that 65,000 could be kicking 90,000 people. Now, you may say, well, that's too bloated, but 90,000 people, that makes this courthouse, while I still think it's new, too small. So how well we plan here is so critical to what we're going to be able to come up with. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think there's certainly some factors at play as well. South Dakota is when we hear about the numbers of, or Sioux Falls growth in terms of the business that's coming to Sioux Falls, or the businesses that are slated to come to Sioux Falls. Beyond that, we hear of the migration out of New York, out of California, to a place where you can, as our old slogan from the 70s, wasn't it, come feel free again? And South Dakota is an attractive place for people to move to. So I don't foresee that growth going down. I think I just heard the other day that there are 169 listings on the MLRS in Sioux Falls, and that's not very many houses. That's the entire inventory. And so I think our growth is going to continue to go through the roof. I think that we are a great community, a great county with our communities of Canton, Harrisburg, T, Beresford, and Lenox, and southern Sioux Falls. So I just have to think that it's going to continue to grow on an almost exponential level, and that we will remain in the top 10 as one of the fastest growing counties in the nation. And you think about, I always think about, 100 years ago was 1921. And can you imagine what those commissioners were dealing with? I mean, things that had to have been a little simpler back then. But the old facility would have been 30 years old, over 30 years old by then. And it served them fine. And it served them fine all the way through our build out in when we moved in here in 2008. But they never would have had any prediction. I talked with Representative Otten here last fall briefly, and he talked about his father coming down and walking through Canton, and what a courthouse we have and had. And I think that building has served us well, and these facilities have served us well. Chad, when you talk about this still being brand new, I feel like this is still brand new. I mean, these are great facilities. Our facilities management people keep it up like it's spotless. I get that comment from people who use our facilities all the time that it looks brand new. And it's just unfortunate. I don't know that even if we had that crystal ball that we really would have been able to see that we were out of space in 13 years. But so.
Betty?
Mr. Chairman, this
Betty,
is
you
Judge
can-
Hellman. Could I speak to the question?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Judge Hellman. I just wanted to respond to Commissioner Schmidt's statements as well as to answer the questions that were posed by Chad. When I gave the presentation a couple of weeks ago for the Unified Judicial System, one of the factors that I cited was that SDSU has projected that in 3035, Lincoln County's population will be approximately 90,000 people. I think that fits in quite well with what Commissioner Schmidt has said. And in response to the question about what we anticipate for future growth, I really tried when we presented the court's population and the court's projections to anticipate not only what we thought would be accommodated by the number of employees and case numbers that were projected, but also by what the county actually needed by way of employees to respond to that growth. So I think one of the things that we always need to keep in mind is that South Dakota is very much a population that is consisted of people who are of Norwegian and Dutch descent, and we always try to assume that we can do less. We can do more with less, but I think one of the realizations that would be important for this committee to consider is not necessarily doing more with less, but what is really needed to respond to the needs of a growing community like Lincoln County. So for instance, Mr. Woolman has projected about 30 individuals needed to staff his office in the next 10 to 15 years. And that really coincides with what we project the court system to need in that same time frame, which is about 30 staff members compared to what we are experiencing now with the staff that we have that is grossly under what we actually need to respond to our daily needs. So thank you for that opportunity.
Yes, I have a question. I'd like to go back to the mental health. I know that the assessments just came out, and so my big concern is the burden on taxpayers on the mental health. I was asking about the reimbursement. Where do we stand with reimbursement for all of the charges that are needing for the mental health through Vera? Do they reimburse us, or is the county picking all of that up, or where does all that sit?
I'm going to duck out of the way, Ms. Otten, and direct you to our auditor. Ms. Otten, excuse me.
So to answer the question, we pay a Vera, and then if it's the county of residence, then we will seek reimbursement from the county of residence. But yes, we initially pick up the first tab. And we get most of it reimbursed when we can prove the county of residence. But that's just, it's quite a process.
And it involves hours of time to.
It does, yep.
sound
We
right.
have a full-time lien specialist that works on that nonstop.
Well, then I'm going to assume that maybe they don't even have the ability to pay. And if they're not Lincoln County residents, then who pays the rest of that bill?
If they're a resident of another county in South Dakota, we bill that other county. If they're an out-of-state resident, then we bill the state for the fund. But Lincoln County picks up the initial, and then we have to prove that they are a person of another residence.
It's not a fair situation, and not all counties reimburse.
Correct.
Well, yeah, because if we don't have solid proof that they are a resident of that county, they can deny the claim.
It's only reimbursement for the hearings or for the stay.
Yeah.
Not for Lincoln County actually holding the hearings
and the state attorney's office dealing with all that, we don't get reimbursed for our time.
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
for the lien specialist
we pay.
to do the research and the work either.
Right, exactly, yeah, because the person in my office that does all the research, we don't bill for that. Tom's office, we don't bill for them. The only thing we bill is the QMHP, the board, and the serving the papers.
And essentially, those are hard cost.
Yes,
You know, those are costs that we can't absorb. You know,
We-
we've got to pay the sheriff's office for the service. The QMHP is not a county employee. That's external cost to a certain extent.
yep, yep, and statutory costs that we have to pay, so.
We've been around on that for.
Does that answer your question, Betty, or?
Well, yes and no. I guess if Avera put that in, are they responsible for any of the costs, or do they?
No, they're not.
They don't.
No.
Okay.
Under, there's statutes that make a county required to make those payments. There are, I don't know if it's a full rate that they charge us. It's $750 for 3 days for their stay. And then it goes into another bucket, if you'd say, if they stay longer than 3 days. But no, they don't absorb any cost really. It's all on the county.
And I can assure you, Betty, and it may be just not enough salve to put in the wound, but there has been significant discussions with the commission, state's attorney's office, that are ongoing about attempting to resolve some of these issues. And there's no silver bullets in government, but we're going to attempt to try to resolve these things. And there has been discussions on the commission about this very issue, trying to reform the process and work through some of these issues. To a certain extent, our hands are tied by state statute because we don't have all the authority perhaps that we need or we'd like to have. So it does require some coordination with our compatriots at the state legislature as well.
I know some.
Yeah, I think you do.
Could use some help.
Yeah, with all of that said,
Oh, I was just gonna say, Commissioner, that if there are any further questions, I'd just like to thank everyone for their time and consideration. You know, as my office has grown through the years, I felt that one of my biggest responsibilities was to stay on top of staffing and to make sure that my prosecutors weren't overworked and my staff wasn't overworked. And that's always been one of my biggest fears. And when I see how hard some of the people in my office are working, it concerns me. And if I make requests for staff next year, we're almost out of space. So thank you very much for your time on this committee. What we do here at the county level and the services that we provide are of utmost importance to the public that we serve. And I hope that from this committee, we can figure out a way to maintain our conservative approach to providing the best services that we can in the county. So, thank you.
thank you, Tom. With that said, I'm going to ask Andrew to come forward tonight.
We'll get
And Andrew is going to go into the weeds here and give us a deep dive into the actual square footages and space. And I just want to remind everyone in the general public, Andrew Etram from Architecture Inc., he's here. They've been doing the needs assessment. They've met with all of the departments now, including the court system, law enforcement, sheriff's office, state's attorney, as well as the other administrative and other elected official departments around the county. And I think some of Andrew's presentation is hung up on our website, where folks can go look at it, they can scrutinize it, and but I think what Andrew's going to talk to us about now is specifically get into the weeds for us on state's attorney and sheriff's office.
Mr. Chairman, one question.
Yes.
Tom, will your presentation be on our website?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, good evening again. I'm going to walk through the numbers. The first thing I've got prepared this evening is to walk through the numbers specific to the Sheriff's Department and the State's Attorney. Basically, the square footage that we believe, after several discussions with each group, the square footage that we believe represents the needs that they've presented. So quick agenda, we're gonna review the process similar to last time, and then tonight review preliminary results for the county administration space needs assessment. So we completed the exterior assessment last fall, and we have two separate agreements with the county to do space needs. The first one is on the court system, and the second one is on the administrative side. And we're nearing completion of both. We do have a final confirmation with basically all of the administrative department heads outside of the sheriff and the state's attorney. So we need to set up one more round of some quick discussions just to confirm that the numbers that we're presenting are correct. So at that point then, we plan to gather all this information, put it in a report, and submit it to the county. So we're nearing completion on both of those processes. So again, we're using our understanding of the existing facilities and quantifying the spaces that each of these different departments occupy on the various levels of the original courthouse structure and the administration structure that we're in currently. So starting this evening, we'll talk about the Sheriff's Department. They are, and I've got two sections here. The top one is referencing the administrative side, so the space that they have in the basement of this facility, lower level of this facility. And then that second heading of sheriff and security is really the stuff that's in support of the court system that we've discussed previously. So in the basement and the lower level of this building, they currently occupy just under 9,200 square feet. And discussing the needs that Sheriff Swenson reviewed this evening, we believe in the 5 to 10 year window that they would be at a total of about 10,725 square feet. So an additional 1,530 square feet on top of what they currently occupy. So Mr. Aaron's question earlier of can they physically renovate or make changes to their existing space and meet their needs, I think with the additional 1,500 square feet, which is north of 15% more than what they currently occupy, it wouldn't be possible to rearrange spaces within their existing footprint to fit. So they really need additional square footage to satisfy their needs in the future. So it's the same things that Sheriff Swenson referenced. Restrooms, additional admin or deputy office space, locker rooms for deputies, etc. So that's what makes up the 1,500 square feet. On the sheriff and security side, the supporting of the court system, really these spaces that we've talked about with the sheriff, there are no existing spaces that fit this or fall under this category. And so all of the spaces that we've worked with them to program are net adds to the current facilities. So we programmed 6,740 square feet of additional space. This would include the holding rooms and support spaces off those holding rooms, the images that the sheriff presented this evening, courtroom monitoring, and then the Sally Port and judges, secure judges parking. So those uses in support of the court systems would be a net add of 6,740 square feet. Any questions? So between the two sides, there's just north of 8,200 square feet of additional space required to support the sheriff's department. We can always come back if there are questions after we finish. So similar on the state's attorney, with the current staff of 16 and future growth to somewhere between 26 and 28 in 10 years. Their existing space that they occupy directly above us is 4,780 square feet. That 10-year growth, almost doubling in staff, we've got it programmed at just north of 8,500 square feet in total, or 3,700 and change of additional square feet beyond what they currently occupy. So these would be offices, meeting spaces, support spaces, et cetera, to meet their future needs. Any questions on the state's attorney? So the total, and last time we reviewed the total additional square footage need on the courts side, which was somewhere 18 to 19,000 square feet of net square footage. On the admin side, there's an existing net square footage of 37,445, and including sheriff's department, state's attorney, and all of the other departments in the building, we've come up with a net requirement of 9,300 square feet. So the 1,500 needed by the sheriff in the lower level of this space, plus the 3,700 for state's attorney, makes up 5,200 square feet out of that 9,300. So it's the majority of the growth in the admin facility is those two departments.
And Andrew, just so we're speaking apples to apples here, when you use the term admin facility, what are you referring to?
I am referring to this, the 2008 structure.
Certainly.
Adam, help me understand something. If we add 1,500 feet for the sheriff's department, and then we have 6,740 square feet, which are the holding rooms, courtrooms, Sallyport, et cetera, I put down that was 8,200 square feet. And then I had the state's attorney at 8,500 square feet. Now, I know I'm wrong, but I wrote down 16, I added the two. And it
Good
was
question.
16,700. So where did I go wrong?
So the line or the way we've been classifying things is everything on the court side was the initial assessment that we did, and everything in this structure was the second assessment that we've been doing. So we've got the additional square footage of the sheriff's department. The 1,531 is part of the 9,300 growth on the admin side. The 6,740 is wrapped up in the courts growth.
Okay,
Good question.
okay.
Does that make,
And
clarify,
what-
make sure
what
that
about
that's,
state's attorney, when they needed 8,500, is that under the admin side too?
yeah, so their net additional square footage of 3,728, that's part of that 9,300.
Okay,
So when we finally put these two assessments together and give the big picture, there's about 9,300 square feet under the administration side, and 18 to 20,000 net square feet on the courts side. So between those two, it's 28 to 30,000 square feet of net additional square footage.
Net new space.
Net, again, just to clarify, all of the numbers are presented net, so it's the inside the walls,
okay.
doesn't include circulation, thickness of walls, mechanical ductwork chases, et cetera. So it's net square footage. So we need to multiply that net by a factor to get the gross square footage of the building. So somewhere in the 30 to 35% net to gross would give you your total square footage.
Okay.
Now, all of that, the efficiency factor or what that grossing factor is of 30 to 35% really depends on what the solution is that is generated. Some solutions will be more efficient than others. You know, last time we talked about the potential of adding on in the southeast corner of the property. Well, part of that is we've got to connect to the original courthouse structure. You know, so we're disrupting those spaces and taking spaces that are currently usable and making them circulation. So versus building a brand new facility, you're going to be more efficient. So the total square footage is really a best guess at this point when you're talking about taking it from net square footage to gross.
Right.
Just because it's so solution driven on how efficient you can be with your square footage in your structure.
Right.
Very good question, Commissioner Schmidt. I should have clarified. So this 9,300 includes the 1,500 and change from the sheriff and the 3,700 and change from state's attorney, plus the other departments. So obviously, the other departments are a future discussion, but just from the round numbers and math you can do, if sheriff and state's attorney take up 5,200 of the 9,300 square feet of growth, you know, there's only about 4,000 square feet of additional space needed between the rest of the departments that occupy this structure.
Right.
Any questions on any of the information presented regarding Sheriff's Department, State's Attorney, or the overall numbers for the administration side?
John, Dave, you guys have been pretty quiet. Still processing.
So I can show quickly we've just got a spreadsheet that we use. This is the admin side. So we've got all of the different departments color-coded to match the floor plans. We've got existing square footage tracking, the square footage that they currently occupy, and then the proposed adjacent to that. So, and then, you know, comments in the margin from our discussions with those various departments. So we feel good that the numbers that we're presenting are based in, you know, good conversations with the department heads and good communication and review of the numbers that we've put together. And so at this stage in the game, we feel as confident as we can be. And then likewise, on the judicial side, and we broke this down a little bit different on the judicial program. We did existing needs, you know, to document the deficiencies that they have right now. And then we tabulated 5-year and 10-year growth. That was just because the UJS had numbers and projections that they shared with us in that format. And so we compiled it slightly different for them.
Very well. Thank you, Andrew. Any other questions or comments for Andrew?
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate it. Okay, so this is the time in the program now where we allow public comment. Don't see a lot of the public here tonight, but other committee members are members of the public as well. Does anybody on the committee have a comment they'd like to make? And if not, that's fine as well. John?
Since you brought me up
Yeah.
earlier, I figured I better add
Yeah.
something. No, I just wanted to say something for earlier conversations that I've sat in every one of these meetings, and I think the department heads are being very conservative on what they're doing. We start out with a number, and you have your list of needs and possibly your list of wants, and they're very good about saying, you look, you know, this is more of a want than a need, so maybe we shouldn't be including this number or this position into it. And so when Andrew and I have talked, I am very, very, very happy with, I think, with the accuracy of these numbers, because I still think probably a couple of the departments that we'll hear about in the future are probably being a little more conservative than they probably should be, but I don't question the department head that makes that call. I just hope, much like Chad had said, that, 10, 12 years from now, we're not going, geez, I wish we had another room for another person in this department, But yeah, these numbers, I'm really confident, are very accurate. And I'm real happy with how this study has been going, so.
Thank you, John. Anybody else? Commissioner Schmidt?
Yeah, when we've talked about departments, I also want to mention the veteran service officer, who is probably outgrown her little cubicle down there, because at one time that was adequate, but through her successes, she now has a park bench in front of her office where veterans have to sit and wait to be prosecuted, or to be, not prosecuted, excuse me. I'm just looking at the state's attorney, and that's the first thing I think of, Anyway, to be handled with all the different questions that they have. So there again, how do you forecast that? Because we have an obligation to serve that. And if you look at our country and look at our involvement in the world affairs, we're going to continue to have soldiers, or they're going to come back and they're going to need service. So anyway we look at this thing, you just see growth. And Chad, I think you certainly said a mouthful about how we prepare properly to anticipate what our needs are. But then on the other hand, we also have to take into consideration another thing, because I've noticed an increase in the amount of emails and phone calls because we have sent out our assessments. And the taxpayers out there want to know what is going on, why are my values going up? What happened here? Well, there's so many things that counties are responsible for, but we don't have the ability to, I think, explain in detail how this happened. So when we start talking about all of these things, somewhere we have to confront the reality of what is affordable and what will the taxpayers really want to invest in. For example, the court system, though, for me, is counties are kind of always on the bottom end of everything. Betty, you asked the question, who pays for these things? Well, we do. Why? Because it's a state statute. Do we get reimbursed for all of that expenses? Good gosh, no. So the same thing goes when the court system says that you have to provide adequate space. They are the ones that are going to be the driver here. Help me, we'll do the best we can with what we have, but yet they are in control. That's a state statute. So when we start looking at all of this, you confront several fronts. You confront the needs that we have for a growing county. You confront the taxpayers that have to pay for additional space. And also you got to provide that space has to be good enough to satisfy the court system. So we really have a very large challenge in front of us. And that's just my own comment.
Thank you, Commissioner Schmidt. You know, I was at the Springdale Township meeting last night, the annual meeting. And if Lincoln County is one of the fastest growing counties in the country, Springdale Township is one of the fastest growing townships in the nation. Northeast, far northeastern side, Jim and I both represent portions of that township. And I can tell you the growth and development is off the charts. We have multiple high-end residential developments that are either going in or preparing to go in that will be in front of this commission shortly. There's incredible growth in the, I guess what I call the Sioux River Valley area, up and down 488th Avenue. It's just incredible, the amount of growth that's going in down there, and we got to provide services. But that's what I'll use as a segue into what we're looking at for future meetings here and what our task of this committee is going to be. So our next committee meeting, which we'll get together and determine what that date's going to be, but that is going to be where we clean up the rest of the administrative portion of the courthouse here with the other elected officials. They're going to come in, they're going to talk about their needs. John said maybe there's a couple departments who need to be goosed a little bit to tell us what their space needs are, and appreciate the fact that all of these office holders are being conservative, but it's for this committee to kind of suss out what their actual potential needs are. So that'll be the next meeting, and then we are going to shift and pivot into starting to roll our sleeves up, if you will, into the next phase of this committee. And I've been consulting with and talking to from other county commissioners around the country who have gone through this same exact process. And what we're looking at next in terms of where this committee is going to go is we've done our needs assessment and our resource evaluation process, thanks to Architecture Incorporated. But now we're going to go into the strategic plan portion of this, and that's where there's going to be a number of meetings held. And so we're going to start doing things like developing courthouse occupancy scenarios, developing administrative building scenarios, defining new construction and renovation options, define project priorities, phasing plan and schedule, develop preliminary cost estimates, develop recommendations and a final report. Now, that's just what I'm reading off of there was a proposed strategic plan or a way forward that was suggested to me by one of the county commissioners I talked to down south about how they moved forward with building their courthouse. And I think in conjunction with Architecture Inc., we're going to start moving into some of those meatier, heavier kinds of discussions where we move from identifying what the needs are and then progressing, if you will, from left to right, from start to finish in terms of what are potential solutions moving forward. We want to be very careful as a county where we don't start off with a solution in mind. This is a very public-driven process. We want the public to feel invested in this process. There are no sacred cows. Tell us, everybody can come in here and tell us what we're thinking. We want to ensure people there is no preordained or predetermined solution in mind. Maybe we'll build a 15-story skyscraper in our backyard, or maybe we'll build something in the front yard. None of those decisions have been made. I can tell you that for certain. Just none of those things. Some of those things have been talked about, but in terms of a way forward as a committee, none of those things have happened. And that's the whole process of this committee, so we can figure those things out as a way forward. So next committee meeting, take care of the rest of the county departments, and then follow-on meetings from that. We're going to start talking about how are we going to do this. And as always, always open to people making their comments offline if they want to me, saying, hey, Aaron's, did you think about this? What do you think about this? Just, shoot me an email or a phone call or whatever, and I'll bring it up for you. With that said, anybody else have anything for the good of the order? So I've got 8:41, so going once, going twice, sold. Thank you. Have a good evening.